Hi everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar Hopsteiner Forum. Today, we would like to welcome you to the presentation of our guidelines for hop buying 2024. My name is Alexander Feiner, and I'm the Head of Innovation and Research at Hopsteiner, and I am your host today. I'm sure you're all familiar with webinars, but for those of you who are attending for the first time, I would like to say a few words about the setting. The webinar is scheduled for a total of about 45 minutes, starting with a 30-minute presentation, followed by a Q&A session. During the webinar, both your microphone and camera will remain switched off. You can ask questions or make comments at any time through the Q&A tab in the webinar menu. The questions are directed to me and will be taken up at the end of the presentation. Here with us today, we have Joachim Gehde, our Managing Director at Hopsteiner, Germany. Joachim started his career in the mid-90s after receiving his degree in business administration with focus on marketing, human resources, and production management. In 2004, he was appointed as Managing Director. Since that, he is in charge of sales, logistics, and marketing. Joachim, the annual hop guidelines are usually launched at the Braubiennale in Nuremberg. As we all know, it's sometimes pretty busy there, and I'm sure during this webinar you will have a lot more time to go into details and to demonstrate the trends of the hop market. So we're very curious now. The stage is yours.
Okay, Alex, thank you very much. Welcome everybody. So as Brau is a bit later this year, I think it's two weeks later than usual, I had a bit more time to prepare the numbers, and I'm happy to share that with you today. So we will, at our stand at the Brau, we will have a printout of the guidelines. And before we get into the details of crop 2024, I would just like to remind us how the situation was after crop 2023. In 23, we had a production of alpha here of roughly 11,000 tons. At the same time, the estimate for year production was a slight increase, was 4.7 gram alpha. We calculated the usage of somewhere around 8,740 tons alpha, which gave us a surplus of close to 2,100 tons, which was, as you can see here, many years in a row we had this overproduction, and so that's how we started into crop 2024. And accordingly, acreage changes could be seen in some of the growing regions. As you can see here, if you compare the growing region Hallertau crop 23 and 24, acreage didn't change a lot. I mean, it was minus 1.8% in total for Hallertau. It was minus 1.7 for all German growing regions, and the acreage remained above 20,000 hectares for Germany in total. What we noticed actually was the continuation of the trend that Hercules is still increasing. You can see that here it went from roughly 7,000 hectares to a little above 7,400 hectares. And at the same time, of course, Magnum is reduced. And we also saw some acreage reductions in the varieties Perle, Spalzelect, Tradition, Saphir. So all the aroma varieties actually were affected, but no major change. I would call that a side movement. Also in other growing regions in the rest of Europe, we do not see major changes, minus 1.4% from crop 23 to crop 24. But, and that's very obvious, big changes again happening in the US. In crop 21, we came from a number here, 25,700 hectares, and we have now come down to the 18,300 hectares in crop 2024. Which means is again an acreage reduction of minus 18.5% compared to last year. And some of the varieties which were heavily affected, of course, are varieties like Citra, Mosaic, Centennial. No, it's not correct. Cascade, sorry. Also, Cascade was very much affected. And this, of course, follows the trend that we've seen in the craft beer industry. Craft beer industry in the US, which is served mostly by the US varieties, has a weak development over the past years. And so after we've seen overproduction in these varieties, acreage was massively reduced. Worldwide, we've seen an acreage reduction of roughly minus 8% and still have a growing area of around roughly 56,000 hectares. So that was the acreage, and then after farmers had changed acreage during spring, talking about Europe and Germany, we had favorable weather. It was warm again, but we had sufficient precipitation until the month of July, and so everybody was expecting a decent crop with in terms of kilo hops, in terms of yield, and also kilo alpha. So we were expecting good qualities. Unfortunately, this did not happen because we had a very warm and dry period in the beginning of August, and we saw that the alpha production was kind of interrupted. And so we have good yields in most of the varieties, but disappointing numbers for the alpha contents. And we will come to the alpha numbers a bit later. As you can see here, we had good yields in total in Germany. We have this here close to 2.4 tons per hectare, which is very comparable to the crop here in 21, which was a very good crop, a record crop. And so we have in Hallertau in total, we have produced 40,000 tons. You can see here the availability of certain varieties. The Hallertau Mittelfrüh, of course, a specialty variety, and this only shows limited availability. Hersbrucker is still available. Most of the other varieties have good availability because the crop was pretty good. Very similar weather conditions also in other growing regions in Europe. And again, we see a decent crop with a total production of close to 2 tons per hectare. Again, very comparable to the numbers that we saw in crop 21. Also Czech Republic again on a good level. I lost the mouse, Alex. Here it is. With 1.3 tons, and as you can see here, the variations between the yields in the crop years. Czech Republic always is pretty amazing, but this year again a good crop. In terms of tonnage, in the US also a reasonable crop. Of course, a much smaller crop compared to last year. We've seen that massive acreage reduction, and of course the the quantities followed the acreage development. What is also noticeable is here the tonnage, tons per hectare. This went up. But I think this is not mainly driven by weather conditions. This is the result of the acreage changes in different varieties, and we see more higher yielding varieties now which are in production. Total world crop 113 tons compared to 118 tons in the past year. This is only a minus of 4.2. Again, as we had a big acreage reduction, it's not a surprise that the total production has been reduced compared to previous year. And I've mentioned it earlier, unfortunately, some of the alpha contents were again disappointing. And just to highlight some of them here, we have, again, lost the mouse, sorry for that. Here we are. We have a value only of 2.5%, again for Hersbruck, which is 3 years in a row now, a disappointing number. 21 was a very good crop, as you can also see here, for example, for variety Perle, but this is also 1/3 less than what we had harvested in 2021. We have 6.1. On the right side, talking about some of the different varieties, was not great. Last year was record low actually 2015. Just to see the message, I cannot hear you. I continue. But again, in the US, very stable alphas all over the years. I mean, that's really the beauty of the irrigation and the varieties that they are using. Result of tonnage and alpha, of course, is the alpha production. We had seen the total world crop here with these 113,000 tons, sorry, which resulted this year in a production of 10,623,000 tons after the 10,822 in last crop, in crop 23. And we have noticed that was a big overproduction that we saw last year, how we went into the new crop. And so we will probably again see later if we have again produced an overproduction. What's also noticeable and can be seen since a few years is the development of the shares of the different variety segments. We have here the bitter varieties again increasing to, let's say, roughly 50-50, and we came from a 60-40 share in the earlier years. So the reduction of the aroma varieties that we see in many growing areas can be easily followed here by this chart. Total production worldwide was 9.4. I mean, this is not a massive decline from the very good crop that we had in Europe from 9.6, but we need to take into account that US was very stable, while the European production was lower than in 21. But in the end, this is a slight reduction on a worldwide level from 9.6 to 9.4 in the current crop year. So where it all comes together, that's again the new alpha supply and demand situation. We had a look at the very beginning of the presentation about the 23 situation. Now we can add the numbers from 24. Again, we have produced on a smaller acreage, very close numbers than what we've seen last year. We have a world beer production, which we think will go up again. During summer, we have proved that our numbers were correct and have again done analysis of worldwide major beer brands, and taking the major beer brands plus the production of craft beers, we come to a total number again of 4.7 gram alpha that are used in the worldwide beers. And so that's, if you compare again the alpha usage of around 8,800 tons to the 10,620 tons that have been produced, we have again produced kind of overproduction of close to 1,825 tons, which it will lead us, that's the expectation also for the coming years. We will again see an acreage reduction. I mean, that's the numbers, and just looking at it in a different chart to show the oversupply of the years since 2017. And we have produced massive inventory in that time. And yeah, that's the situation currently with all the problems that we face, and I will come to that later, and would like to discuss that with you, how we think we can overcome the situation and maybe do better in the future. to avoid such massive overproduction and inventory problems in the industry, and also for us, the warehouses are full. So as I said, we expect an acreage reduction worldwide. We will definitely see an acreage reduction again in the US. Numbers, of course, for crop 24 are not yet available, but we expect, this is a chart here showing the situation in Hallertau. We expect that the spot prices, which is the green line, will be much, much lower than in the past years. Some of the down payments are very low, attractive prices for brewers this year. And as soon as the spot prices are so much lower than the forward contract prices, we expect an acreage reduction. And we have to see how big that is. Especially we have to see how big it can be in Germany, because for next year, we still have a lot of forward contracts in place. We have a percentage of forward contracts at more than 80 to 85%. So there's a limited possibility for farmers to reduce the acreage, but we will definitely see bigger acreage changes after crop 25 in crop 2026, when also the forward contract rate really drops to numbers close to 50%. So as a kind of summary, or to discuss the issues that we currently see in the market, what are the to-dos, what are the points we need to discuss with our partners in the brewing industry? Of course, this is inventory management. As I said, we have produced massive amounts of overproduction, which has been part of forward contracts in the past years by the brewing industry. I think that this overproduction was part of contracts, and brewers had bought it to build inventory, but in some cases, inventory has become really big. And also in some cases, we can only invoice and get paid for the inventory when we ship it. And if this sometimes takes a while, we have to finance it for quite a bit. We pay the farmers after harvest, and then we have to wait to get the money back until we can make the actual shipment. So for us, it's very important to keep inventory on a reasonable and manageable level, especially as interest rates have become much, much higher. And I mean, keeping inventory has become expensive after a few years where money was very, very cheap, money was free, interest rates were super low, but these times are over. So for the future, we want to discuss also with you contract terms, really discuss with the brewing industry worldwide how we can improve. Can we set a certain pick and pay date? How long should a storage time be? How much storage space do we need? I mean, this has gotten a bit out of control. Contracts, timing, and volumes. What I mean with that is the following. What we have seen in many cases is brewery makes a contract for 4 or 5 years, flat volume. We think it would also be interesting to think about doing bits and pieces every year on a declining basis. Let's say you've covered 80% for next year, 60-40 for the following years, and then always add on a rolling basis, always add contracts every year. If a brand or a variety is not as successful as you may have thought, then you have the option to kind of fade out and not enter into massive amounts of contracts. So timing and volume, I think, is very important. In the coming year, we will see acreage reduction. This trend will also continue and probably become bigger in Germany and Europe in the time after 25. So we expect, as I said it earlier, massive acreage reductions in crop 2026. And still super important. I mean, again, this year we had reasonable weather conditions in Europe until July, and then the harvest, the alpha contents were damaged in these 2 weeks, early August. And we think as weather conditions continue to change, we see warmer and drier climate and warmer and drier summers in our regions and in many growing regions. We need to do much better new varieties. I mean, the breeding of a new variety takes up to 10 years. I mean, in our breeding programs, we try to speed that up, and Alex can talk for hours about what he does and what his team does to speed it up. But let's assume it's still 10 years. And if breweries then take another 5 to 10 years to finally accept the new variety, use it in their recipes, have it in the specs, then we come up to 15 to 20 years total time until a new variety is developed and accepted. And we think that life cycles of varieties will become shorter in future to keep track with changing climate and warmer conditions. So I think we also need to speed up the process on working with you as breweries. We should also reduce the time until a new variety is used and accepted. So that was a very fast overview. Alex said it would take 30 minutes. I think we did much faster. So in the end, his introduction became longer than my presentation. Thank you very much, and we're happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Joachim, for this very interesting talk and the overview of the situation in the hop market. Just need to check if there are any questions. Here's one, yeah. Acreage situation in 2025, what do you expect in Europe and in the US?
As I said earlier, I mean, in 2025, we expect acreage reductions again in the US, not yet in Europe or in Germany, because we still have all the contracts in place. But then we will see a drop in crop 2026. That's the expectation, and we hope that until then we can also give farmers again signals with new contracts to give them an idea where the acreage should be. Because if you over reduce, let's call it over reduction, you end up in much higher prices in the future, and we all want stability. The farmer wants stability, and of course breweries want stability and stable prices.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think there's another question. You mentioned it already, I think, in your talk, but why is the situation currently a problem in the hop industry, the oversupply? Why is it such a problem for the hop industry?
So I hope we were live all time and could be heard, but let me mention it again. I mean, it is a problem because, of course, on the one hand, you need a lot of space. I mean, we as an industry, we have to store it for the brewers until we ship it. Needs a lot of capacities and a lot of space. And I mentioned it earlier. I mean, the point is, as if we do not have the contracts right, contract terms, and have a defined pick and pay date with everybody, we will see cases when we have to wait for years until we can do the shipment actually, and that's a big burden for the financial situation. Of course, banks are watching that very carefully, and we have to report on reasons and how we think we can do better.
Thank you. Any further questions? Here's one. Hello. Do the hop suppliers have more stock supply than actually needed in the market? That's one question.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting point. I mean, the oversupply of the past years has been widely taken by the brewers. I mean, as I said, breweries had, and as a total, more contracts than they actually needed. I mean, that was part of it was, I think, was to build up inventory to be safe if you have a crop failure. I mean, there's always a good reason to have a certain inventory level, but maybe some of the brewers, and this goes a bit to the US crop industry, which is also using massive amounts of crops, maybe they have overestimated the production development in their breweries, and they have bought on the expected growth, which did not happen. So the contract, most of the hops are actually in brewers' hands in contract, and we're trying to help also with what we call inventory management. If we see a demand for a certain inventory position, we try to help, but as soon as the market is generally in overproduction, there are limited options to have.
Yeah, and also new varieties have just much higher productivity and yield, and in years where everything is kind of okay of climate situation, also the volumes are just much higher than it used to be with old varieties. Yeah.
As you can see, Alex is our breeder. So he's a big fan of the new varieties, as we all are, and we need them. And actually, the last 3 years now, with disappointing alpha levels in some of the varieties, have led to many brewing trials by breweries saying, okay, now we get it. We need to use new varieties to have a stable supply.
Yeah, and especially this year, you mentioned it in your presentation. It was such a surprise that the alpha values were that low after such a summer with decent precipitation, decent rain, but the numbers of drought days and also the heat days was again the reason why hops were stressed and had lower alpha contents as expected. So it's kind of a sign. So because if it's in such a summer like last year, the values are not that good. When would they come back, and when would be the year where everything is perfect again? So this is something where we are definitely working on. Yes. Here's another one. What are your plans about the maintain diversity, medio ambiental environment? Okay, sorry, I cannot read. What are your plans about to maintain diversity environment about the cultivate old varieties such as Nugget? So
I hope I understand the question correctly. I mean, in general, what you call old varieties, we not only have Nugget, we also have Northern Brewer, we have Hersbrucker, we have Hallertau Mittelfrüh, and we still will continue. As soon as a brewery is interested to continue to work with such a variety, we will continue to grow it. We will continue to forward contract it with the farmers. And so, as you were talking about Nugget, we see the same thing for Northern Brewer, which is still in the ground and still available. So it's the brewer's choice. I mean, if a brewery wants a variety, we will continue to grow it. Yeah, but of course, it's getting with all the problems and issues with variations in yield, with variations in alpha. But that's why these varieties have really become varieties for the forward contract market, and certain inventory levels in the breweries, which are definitely needed for the older varieties, which are stressed by the climate conditions.
Yeah, and if I may add one comment here, also for us in the breeding department, it's very important that we keep diversity in terms of variety characteristics out there. So what we don't want to end up is with just a few varieties and they all taste the same. We try to keep the diversity, and we are breeding to find replacements for existing varieties which are successful in the market. And even if some varieties might not be there in the future because of some reason, there is then still a successor for that specific need. And this is our biggest target, not to breed just something which is resistant and tolerant. We want to breed something which is accepted by the market.
Mm-hmm. More questions?
One more, yeah. How do you see the beer market size for 2025, 2026? As currently we see a lot of political instability in many countries.
It's definitely a difficult one. I mean, we had after COVID, after the dip of production, the production of beer started to recover 21, but then all of a sudden we saw a side movement. We saw, due to political situations and for different reasons, we saw the beer production worldwide going down. One explanation I had heard for this side movement or reduction in many brands in many regions was the price increases to handle the cost increase in the breweries. Energy has become super expensive, and in many cases, brewers were trying to get higher prices from consumers, which led to a reduction of consumption. The trends that I have seen also for the years after 25, 26 have been positive again. I think we expect growth to be back 27, 28 into the early 30s, and we hope to overcome this side movement with decreases that we've seen over the past years. For 25, we again see a super small increase from 24. Also 26 will not make a massive jump up, but the long-term trend is positive.
Okay, thank you. As I see, there is currently no more questions.
Yeah, then let me start to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Alex, for being my host today and my moderator, helping me with the questions, helping me with the technique here. And yeah, thanks everybody, and we hope to see you soon again.
You're welcome, Joachim. So then I would like to close the session of today, and thank you very much for joining us today and interesting questions which were sent to us. It's time to close the session for today, and we hope you enjoyed this webinar. You will receive an email shortly with a link to watch the recorded video of today's session. In addition, we would be happy if you give us a very short feedback directly after closing the session. On our website, under the section Technical Publications, you will also find some of the mentioned papers of today's presentation, or it's more like under the guidelines, where you can find it on our homepage.
Not yet.
Okay.
It will be coming in a few days.
It will be, okay.
We're still working on some corrections, some typos, but before we print it, this will be corrected and then we put it online.
Very good, very good. And if I'm informed right, this was the last webinar of the 2024 year of the Hopsteiner Forum. So we will hopefully then see you next year with new webinars. And yeah, I thank you again and have a great day and all the best. See you soon.
Thank you.